Okay.
All right. Before we start, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we work, play, and connect. We recognise and share their connection to land, waters, and community, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. All right. So let me just get set. I don't need to say thanks, Daniela, because I did that piece. Are we recording, Jake? Yep, cool. All right. The other thing I need to let you know before we begin is that we have a special surprise offer that is only available to the people that are here live. And you'll hear about that towards the end. Kelsey from DFX is going to jump on and announce it close to the end. So make sure you stick around. All right, let me tell you a bit about who we are and then we'll get into it. I'm Dave Jereb. I'm Senior OT and owner of MoveAbout Therapy Services. With my beautiful wife, Kathy, who's also an OT. We've run MoveAbout for over 15 years now, and we've got clinics in Sydney, the Central Coast, and the Newcastle, Lake Macquarie areas. We own and run the Lake Mac one with the amazing Kim Berry, who's here today also. We're just waiting for the new space to open there, which is so exciting. It's going to be awesome. I have a Bachelor's of Applied Sciences OT and a Master's of Health Sciences OT from the University of Sydney. I've been practicing for over 20 years. Before having the honour of teaching this STEPPSI course, I previously presented courses, A Dynamic Approach to Regulation and Behaviour and Connecting with Kids with ASD. I've worked in paediatrics in both the US and Australia in my time. And Kathy and I created the MoveAbout activity cards, which has a deck of 64 cards that have sensory diet and strengthening activities for kids. And actually, one of my claim to fame, when I first met Tracy Stackhouse, was at a sensory tools workshop. And Tracy had said she had used those with kids when she was working in India. And that was sort of like, oh my goodness, that was so exciting. What I would say is actually the saddest thing for me at the moment in recent years has been the number of early years OTs who are just feeling overworked and overwhelmed and burning out. And actually sometimes even leaving the profession because they don't have the support in their current workplaces. And that's really the primary reason that we've decided to expand our training and mentoring at MoveAbout. I have a personal vision of ending early years burnout in OTs and doing that by supporting them to feel in control, capable, and authentically confident in their ability to support kids and to support the people who support the kids. And at MoveAbout, that's our organising principle. We support the people who support the kids. And that's always been our families. And it's also always been our team members because they're the ones who support the kids. And we have the Great Place to Work certification to prove that. So our team voted and we met the criteria for Great Place to Work. And so that was really exciting this year. We also want to support the people in our community who support kids and families. And that's all of you. And that's one of the reasons we set up this MoveAbout Unplugged series and the other things that we're doing. So my primary focus in our business this year is on our mentoring and training programs. We've got the MoveAbout Mentoring, our New Grad Calm program, our MoveAbout Immersion program, as well as workshops coming out soon. We're going to be bringing Kim Barthel out at the end of the year, but we'll be doing something even earlier mid-year with Kim via webinar, but from our clinics so that we can connect in real life with each other. You may have seen mentions to things like the MoveAbout Mentoring, the New Grad Calm, or the Immersion program in the slides that Jake had running before. If you have any questions about those, you can DM Zoe Gianduzo from our team during this Zoom. You could message her your email and what you'd like to find out about. You could message Mentoring, Calm, Immersion. Just shoot that to her with your email and she'll send you out some information, or you can book a time to chat. The other way that last year we started to support you all is through our MoveAbout Unplugged series. And so that's what we're doing today, where we have discussions with master clinicians and we offer it to our community of OTs for free. Last year we hosted Kim Barthel. We talked about how workplaces could support their teams. We talked to Sheila Frick about sound-based strategies in therapy. This is our first for 2023, and we'll be discussing the STEPPSI tool and training. And we are so excited to have Tracy Stackhouse and Julie Wilbarger as our surprise guest with us today. Actually, we were 5 off being sold out before we even announced Julie. So there's probably a lot of people that are sad that they didn't make it in, but maybe we can make that available to them. But they won't get the special offer. So let me tell you about these wonderful ladies that are with me. These are heroes of our profession. The first is Tracy Stackhouse. Tracy is a dear friend of mine. She is the executive director of developmental ethics in Denver, Colorado, a not-for-profit organization or non-profit organization that provides clinical and training services to engage and elevate pediatric therapeutic practice. She is a leading pediatric occupational therapist involved in clinical treatment, research, mentoring, training regarding OT intervention for persons with neurodevelopmental disorders, especially Fragile X syndrome and autism. Tracy has a master's degree in developmental psychology and neuroscience. She received her NDT training with Lewis Bly, and she's SIP certified and was the clinical specialist in sensory integration at the Children's Hospital in Denver, as well as the OT for the Fragile X research and treatment session. Tracy continued her clinical and research work with Dr. Randy Hageman at UC Davis Mind Institute during its startup year, and that was just before she started developmental ethics. So Tracy's written several book chapters on sensory integration and neurodevelopmental disorders, and she teaches nationally and internationally on sensory integration, autism, Fragile X, and many other topics related to that. She's the lead author of The Spirit and STEPPSI, and these are clinical reasoning tools which are really leading edge evidence-based models for pediatric practice. We're going to be talking about the STEPPSI today. These models are utilized in OT practice around the globe, and they're included actually in the model at Camp Jabiru in Australia. That I think a lot of people actually on this call today have been to Jabiru. The tools are shared in their Spirited Conversations podcast, as well as through DFX's training platform, Learning Journeys. So Tracy hosts the Spirited Conversations podcast with Corey and Michelle, with the support of the wonderful Sarah McInnes from Seed Pediatric Services in Orange. Fun fact, over 20 years ago, Sarah and I went to uni together. So that was a good year, that year, I think. Tracy's a member of the National Fragile X Foundation Clinical Research Consortium, the Science and Clinical Advisory Committee, and the NFXF Advisory Council. We should have booked an extra hour just for your bio, Tracy and Julie. But let me tell you about Julie really quickly, and then we're going to get into some juicy discussion. Julie received a BS in physiological psychology from UC Berkeley, an MS in occupational therapy from Boston University, and a PhD in developmental cognitive neuroscience from the University of Denver in Colorado. She's practiced as an OT in early intervention with high risk and developmentally delayed infants and toddlers in public schools and in private practice. At the Children's Hospital in Denver, she served as clinical specialist in sensory integration. She joined the faculty of Dominican University of California, which is where you're at now, right, Julie? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. In the occupational therapy department back in 2013 as an associate professor. Julie's done extensive research, published and presented on issues of sensory processing, sensory modulation disorder, sensory integration in children. Her research is focused on the study of affective and sensory processing in a range of clinical populations. And she is probably best known in our circles for developing the Wilbarger TheraPressure protocol with Pat Wilbarger, and also creating the STEPPSI tool for clinical reasoning with the wonderful Tracy and Sharon Tranell. So, Julie and Tracy, welcome to our MoveAbout Unplugged series on the STEPPSI tool.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the only thing that's not on our bio is that Julie and I, when we have our brains together, we have like a really good brain, like together. So we love working together, and I should always put that on my bio, that I need to have Julie Wilbarger with me to have the rest of my brain function.
And I'm here for comic relief. So our first question is going to be about what inspired the tool, but I think before we do that, and I'm putting you on the spot here, I should have given you a warning. Tracy, you have such a beautiful way of just explaining the STEPPSI tool. Do you think you could, we could do the, explain it in a minute. Yeah. Tell us about the STEPPSI tool. Just explain what it is, and then we'll jump into where it came from.
Sure. So the STEPPSI is a clinical reasoning tool that allows you to think about the child's state as a summary concept related to how they're showing up and participating and what's impacting that ability to show up. But then it moves into two different kinds of areas of clinical reasoning. One is that what are the elements that you use in your intervention, in your treatment plan, in your consultation model, but what are the elements that you need to tick through to really make sure you're being comprehensive? So that's the STEPPSI mnemonic, STEPPSI, that stands for sensation, task, environment, predictability, playfulness, self-regulation, and interaction. And then you use those elements across the dimensions of helping a person to attain a base of organization and regulation, and then move into opportunities for challenge, whether that be the just right challenge in a therapeutic situation where we're trying to expand capacity, or whether that be to manage the challenges of everyday life. So that's the STEPPSI in a nutshell.
Love it. It is truly my favorite tool. And I think that the reason that you asked me to join you to teach it is because I am the biggest groupie. I'm the world's biggest groupie, and we use it in all our one-to-ones and our group soups. And we use it so much because Tracy hates me saying this. I think it is the world's best cheat code for OT. So it really does expand the way you think about things and help us be holistic in our practice. But man, it is such a relief for a new grad therapist just to have like a framework that helps you be holistic and just cover your bases. It's amazing. So the first question that I want to, well, so before I jump into the first question, Jake's just remind me, you guys, it would be really great as things pop up, if you can just shoot them into the chat if you have aha moments. So we might not see some of the questions, but Jake's going to keep an eye on the chat and maybe take note of particularly some of those being, yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. Yeah, I really love that, because it'd be great to share that. It's a really good way for us to learn with each other as well. So the first question, we want to look at what inspired the STEPPSI? Why create a tool? Who goes, like, I've never woken up and said, I'm just going to create an amazing tool that all OTs can use to be better practitioners. Why create a tool? What inspired it? And then towards the end of that, we'll think about, well, and then why update it? Because there's been an extra P added in recent years. I'm handing that to you guys. I didn't create it.
Okay, Jules. So let's talk about why we did this.
Well, it started with being invited to conduct some research on the efficacy of occupational therapy with children with sensory modulation issues. But we did not have, there wasn't a tool out there that would standardize or create a fidelity model for how we were going to apply the intervention. So we were inspired. We were wedged into doing it by a need, but then I think it quickly became a passion. We realized that we had something really special going on. And I just want to add something here that I just haven't heard in some of the dialogue of the how we created it, because the how we created it was really truly one of the most beautiful things. And it was really, actually, now that I reflect on it, an intense qualitative research project. What we did is that we had a group of really, really good master clinicians at the Children's Hospital of Denver. We worked together and we videotaped a whole bunch of treatment sessions, and we watched them all together, and we kept asking, why did you do that? Why did you do that? What happened when you did that? Why did you do that? And we exhaustively went through how people were thinking and what was the native, natural clinical reasoning of people who were excellent therapists. And once we had gone through this process and we had all these sort of thoughts and bubbles on the wall, Tracy, who's always brilliant with words and mnemonics and things, I think, like, lined up all the words and said, hey, they could spell this. But I think it's important to know that we didn't just go to the literature and think, put this together, because we did go to the literature. We were based in literature, but it was really based in an organic process of really understanding deep clinical reasoning by clinicians.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that we created a culture together, Julie and I, with the team at Children's that I feel like is part of what we try to transmit, and part of the tradition that we see at MoveAbout, but at other clinics, I see people who are familiar, you know, on the screen from lots of different places. And what we tried to do is to say that reflective reasoning, sitting down and talking with each other and asking questions and trying to really get it right and really understand what happens when it doesn't go so right, and being vulnerable with each other and being willing to really authentically have those dialogues and ask questions was so central. And then what happened as we sat around, we literally just had, you know, we would have these discussions and dialogues, and then we had an intensive kind of, let's bring this into a framework meeting in my house. And we gave everybody all of these sticky notes, and we had papers, and we were just writing all of the crystallized thoughts and ideas down. And as we did that, you know, the thing that happened was the expansion of our knowledge, and also just the ability for every single clinician. We had really master clinicians. We had Julie on our team, Sharon Chanel, who's one of the most beautiful clinicians ever. We had clinicians who were brand new on our team, who were pretty new grads, and were just trying so hard to figure out what all of this was about. But really, everybody gets to show up as themselves as a therapist in the STEPPSI. So the thing that's so amazing is that we were able to see the authenticity of individual therapy style, but also knew that we needed a fidelity tool, a way that we could say, what you're doing and what I'm doing adhere to the same principles. And so I don't have to be hilariously cheeky Dave Jereb in a treatment session, because I could never be Dave Jereb in a treatment session, but I get to be me. But when we talk about what we're doing, we can see the places of theoretical match. And that was what Julie and I created a container for. So we were, even though Julie and I at that time didn't have the training in science that we have now, and that we were both kind of inspired to go and get, but we created the container of safety that allowed for the exchange. And so in so many ways, the STEPPSI was inspired by magnificent therapists committed to doing good work and needing a framework. And then the research happened in addition and kind of tandem to that, but it was a beautiful experience to go through the creation of it in a group like that.
And I think one of the things that really inspired us to expand it beyond a fidelity model for a research project was some of our experiences of actually using the STEPPSI and mentoring. I remember having a level 2 fieldwork OT student, and this is very common in level 2 fieldwork students. You say, okay, plan an activity, and they literally design a 3-ring circus, like 75 moving parts, and, you know, props and all of these things. And you just know it's going to fail, but you're, you know, okay, we're going to live and learn. We're not going to shut anybody down here. We're going to let them experience. And when I had a student and the circus failed, and I started talking about, okay, what were some of the things that worked here? Let's talk about the sensation. What sensation? Was that right? Was that too much, too little? And what about the task? And I like, wait a minute, I'm moving her through the STEPPSI, and this is working. It's working. And the light bulbs are going on. She rallied, she tossed out 2 of the rings of the circus. She brought the task down into something that was simple and the just right challenge and moved on. And it was like boom, this is really powerful for training. This is super powerful. And we learned a lot as master clinicians. It was changing our practice from one end, but this, not even a new grad, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into her first field work, or maybe it was probably her second, but and untangling the treatment planning process in the moment.
There is so much freedom within the structure. So it gives like a nice structure that then gives you the freedom to be who you are, but know you're on track. I think that's the power. There are some people that have never heard on it. So I think I want to pull it back just a little bit before we get to the why add the P's, maybe sort of explain it a bit more. Sometimes and correct me if you guys think differently about this, but when I'm talking to someone, the first thing, everyone's familiar with the PEO model, right? Person, environment, occupation. And sometimes I say, look, as a starting point, this mnemonic breaks the PEO down a little bit further. So we want to look at not just fix the person. We're not just mechanics. We're more like coaches. We want to support them in their environment and their occupation. And so if I just quickly, are you guys okay if I just go through the mnemonic and think about how I say it? Tracy and I just did some promo videos and we did explain the STEPPSI in a minute. That was kind of hectic. I might go a little slower than that. And she did her beautiful, articulate way of explaining the whole thing, but I just powered through the letters. I always start with T, actually. Rather than, we're all focused on kids and the person, and we want to help that kid be adaptable across all things. But this is a really useful tool that we can get our goals into function. Then we just open the world up with the opportunities that we have to help them right now. And actually the amazing Tracy gave us the big aha that said almost every day in our clinic, what are you working on? Working on regulation. Regulation for the purpose of what, right? If there's one thing you take away from today, it's that phrase, regulation for the purpose of what? Because if you figure that out, that's your cheat code. You've got a gazillion different things you can do to support that kid that isn't just be a mechanic and fix the kid, right? So I'm going to come in at the T. What's the task that you're asking them to do? Do they know how to do it? Do they know what the expectations are? Do they know what done looks like? Are they interested in it? Is it meaningful? Is it achievable? Is it at the just right challenge for them? If you've got that, and then you know where that task is in the context of where the environment is, what are the sensory and physical features of that environment, those things give you clues about, is it working for them? Is it working against them? Are there opportunities that we could use to support them from that task and that environment? That's a big deal. And then you can look at sensation or sensory motor posture and say, is their body set up to be able to do this task within this environment? Predictability has a lot of overlap with task. And so it's, do they know when it's done? Do they know how long they have to do this unpreferred thing? Do they know how long they get to do this preferred thing before the next thing comes up? Do they have the markers? Like I just said, it's helpful for me to have the structure of the STEPPSI. That's some predictability that I can organize myself around. Do they have the rhythms for the day? And could we use things like visuals or timers or pictures or just more information to help them predict, to be able to feel regulated in their day and supported in that task? I'm going to skip the next P and we'll come back to it again at the end and tie it in. Self-regulation. Can they self-regulate? I always talk about co-regulation comes before self-regulation, but so in that piece of being able to regulate and then interaction is a key that gives us opportunities or challenges about their ability to perform that functional task within that environment. So that's the mnemonic, and all of those areas have areas that you can essentially observe, assess, see what's working for them, what's not working for them, what opportunities are available. You can know who the child is in that context. Is there anything you guys would add to that in terms of the mnemonic? What?
You forgot the E.
Environment. No, I said sensory and physical environment.
Oh,
I said it.
sorry.
Maybe I rushed through it, but yeah, so the E is the environment, so the sensory and physical environment. So I look at the task within the environment to get the context. Is the child's body set up? So if we're looking from a PEO, sensation's kind of P, T is occupation, E's environment, P's kind of occupation, the S is kind of person, but also the social environment, I is the social environment, if we look at the PEO model. So that's the model. If there's nothing glaring that you guys would add to that, you guys have, in the newer version, added in playfulness. And so that's the second P in the STEPPSI now. Why
Yeah,
Jet?
so, I think there's a couple things. The first S in STEPPSI is sensation, but all the way from the first days of the STEPPSI, sensation wasn't just sensory, right? It was about the way you described it perfectly, Dave. And we always included posture, but we really included the sensory processing, the way that we would understand both sensory modulation and sensory discrimination. And we also really included how that connected into the person's capacity to be engaged. And that was partly how their body set them up. So there's a motor relationship to sensation. And so all of that is kind of held in that first S, and it's pretty clunky. You have to know a lot to know what that first S is about, but really any of the elements can feel kind of big. So play and playfulness are areas that were always included in the STEPPSI. But what happened was that, Anita Bundy in particular, but other scholars in our world have done so much work to sort of emphasize the importance of play in and of itself. And in that, just saying that play in and of itself is so darn powerful that learning how to honor it as the tool, the power that it brings without it being so hidden, seemed more and more and more important in the conversations and in the training and in just the way the literature was changing. So we decided to go ahead and expand it. And it also is kind of to make it a little fresh, because there's other parts of the STEPPSI that are also updated. Certainly the theory has changed. When Julie and I were first putting this together, there was nothing called the window of tolerance. It didn't exist. We were sort of developing this simultaneous to the work that, that Dan Siegel was doing, or that Pat Ogden was doing, where that concept was named in a way that now is just everywhere. But when we were putting this tool together, the only thing we had was the model that Julie had put together in 1991 and the neuroscience descriptions of how does arousal interact with sensation. And so we were sort of trying to pioneer a way of helping clinicians be able to get their heads around that concept. I think now we understand regulation in so many more layers than we did when we first put the STEPPSI together, that the current version of the STEPPSI has an update on all of that. So it's updated with both the second P, but also the theory. And I'm going to just call out Ami. Ami Gandhi is on the call, and it's so delightful to see you. I don't want to embarrass you, Ami, but I think that, Ami, you took this course from Julie and I back in like the late 1990s, and you have always told me over all these years that it totally changed your whole practice. And I just thought I would sort of ask you about that.
Well, just exactly like how you have been describing it, I'm thinking, is that in the back of my brain? Was it always there all these years that I'm suddenly thinking, yes, these are the words to it, but it's been 2 decades. So it is automatic for my practice to think just right challenge, that window of modulation, that, the playfulness came because I kept learning and learning and learning, but it was definitely, that's how I have structured my sessions, to know what am I doing? Why am I doing? Is this the just right challenge? It didn't work. What can I do to repair? Where did the regulation fail? And that it gives me joy because you see it clicking when you go back to this to problem solve and when you go back to this to plan.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah. So,
and we put you on the spot then. This is not pre-rehearsed.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
thanks for
totally.
joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
It
Tracy's
was
been
put
my
together.
mentor
Go
for
ahead,
years.
Jules. Yeah.
I was saying, Ami brought up something that we haven't really articulated so much yet because we've focused on the mnemonic, but there's the real core element that I think is also the chief brilliance of the STEPPSI is this process of thinking about assessment. And originally, what we had to go on for thinking about sensory modulation was, again, only that interface between sensation and arousals. But we started breaking down what that means to have arousal. We were not satisfied with, is it high, is it low, or is it just right? We really recognized through really true study of the physiological mechanisms of how we have our state of arousal, and what contributes to that. And so being able to break it down into the components to be able to do a deeper dive analysis in those areas. The expansion, though, I think has really moved into what Tracy calls the 5 A's. Like we had a glimmer of the 5 A's of control and of self-regulation before, but the STEPPSI now in the theoretical and the grounding part of it, that theory has been like really fleshed out and grounded. So we're beyond just arousal and sensation now. It's really into this bigger way of trying to assess and understand self-regulation dynamically across a lifespan, across a week, a day, a moment, a nanosecond. And I think that's having those deep levels of analysis of that state of regulation is really truly the golden key of the STEPPSI.
And I do
So
think we're
that's
sort of,
if
I mean, I think this, this will
sorry,
be
that was me.
someone joining us. Oh, it's a.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to add one more line to what Julia was saying, but I'm sorry.
No, you added. I can't find you to bring you back on the screen, but you tell us what you're thinking.
Well, you know, Tracy gave an example at that time about arousal, and she took a deeper dive into, is this child over-aroused or under-aroused? And then we had to have this video clip, I remember from 20 years ago, that we all thought, oh, this is over-arousal. And then she said, watch him while he sleeps. And that's when we realized how dynamic that modulation process happens. And I think that was what I meant by, yes, it's an excellent framework, but that was when I realized, oh, I had no idea what modulation is. This is what it is.
So this sort of takes me to this idea of one of our questions, and I think we'll just sort of flow into it, is this is great for, this tool is really great for, Julie talked about students, but new grads and everyone. It's just a really nice structure, but the training is actually mind-blowing for therapists, that it just jaws drop, because you get there and you've come with this model of over-responsive, under-responsive, or you've come with this idea of high-low, just right, or you've got this quadrant model of sensory seekers and low arousal, my Eeyores and my Tigers, and then you're like, oh, maybe this kid is behaviorally over-responding to foods, not because he's just over-responsive in everything, but maybe he is tuning into, sorry, I'm going to backtrack. The first mind-blowing thing, this is a spoiler alert for the course where we'll give it in more detail, is guess what? There's like different parts to our nervous system. And when you're responding defensively, you're not just over-discriminating. Like the amount of people that just sort of go like this when you're like, remember we did that thing at uni with an evaluative pathway? It's not just over taking it in, it's registering it as unsafe. That's the bigger heart. And getting back to my example of the picky eater, they might be registering taste and smell that way, that they might be tuning in too much. Who knows? We can't jump in their brain, but often they have really poor awareness in the mouth. They can't organize it. They put it in, they can't find it. They can't clear it from the cheek. If I numbed up your mouth, I took you to the dentist and they sprayed your mouth and you had no feeling in there and then said, now I'm going to feed you spaghetti and meatballs. Do you think you're going to respond defensively? And that's not from having too much sensation or over responding from a sensory perspective. You would be scared to death responding defensively because you don't have enough information to keep yourself safe. That was my big mind-blowing thing looking at arousal. But there's a whole bunch of things in the training where it'll just open your eyes around how we regulate, and it's more than just sensation, and it's a whole bunch of different things. How we look at adaptive responses to get challenged. It's cool. It's really cool in that regard. Is there something around that? I see you nodding, Tracy. What are you thinking? You love that I get excited about this stuff.
Yeah, I get excited. I get excited, Dave. So I love the phrase Julie used a little while ago. It helps untangle. So one of the reasons that I think for new grads that it's so hard when you start trying to treatment plan, and because whatever you treatment plan, the way the kid shows up in the next moment is probably going to be not a match anyway. So that's always very hard. And then just being able to sort of have the confidence because you have a strategy to help ground yourself in your own thinking, and to very systematically make sure you're being comprehensive, and that you have a problem solving tool always right at your fingertips. So the mnemonic of the STEPPSI turns out to be so helpful, even, you know, for new grads, but actually all the time. I was doing a consultation recently in a different country where most of the people that I was interacting with, I didn't speak the same language. You know, we're trying to use translators and Google translators and all kinds of gestures and communication. And so in that, my brain would get a little flooded and cluttered, but I could ground myself by saying, have I gone through and talked about each of these elements, STEPPSI, enough? Did I miss something? Did I skirt over something? Did I miss where the adaptation is really going to come from? And if I can do that, even in these really complex situations, then when I'm with a kiddo who's dysregulated and I'm needing to stay regulated and I'm needing to keep myself grounded in what is possible here, having the tool makes it so concrete for you to be able to tick through and kind of keep yourself mindfully grounded. So all of those reasons, like even all these years later, I feel like I use it every time that I'm working, every time I'm treating, every time I'm consulting, every time I'm doing a podcast. It doesn't matter. I'm thinking about the STEPPSI because it just organizes and structures me to be highly effective. And wow, like that's empowering. And I want that for every clinician, regardless of whether they're newer or more experienced or lost in the woods. You know, we can help you feel super empowered, and it's through, and this tool just does that for people. And that's why I feel so passionate about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of treatment planning too, I think we've been talking about in session. You mentioned consultation. I find it actually the most powerful in consultation. So, you know, in our clinic, we talk about best practice. Yes, we need to be making sure we're hitting person, environment, occupation. So this really ticks the box to make sure that we're being comprehensive and holistic. We also talk about, like, best practice is education, consultation, and direct treatment. I'm not a mechanic. You don't bring your kid to me to fix them. The part I do, if I'm not supporting you, the goal of OT is not to be good at OT, right? The goal is to be able to live your best life in daily life and to function in the world that you live. And so through our ability to use this for education and consultation, we can support parents to really generate ideas, and teachers and everyone else at the time that the struggle's happening, you know. So it's regulation for the purpose of what's happening, where is this breakdown? Give us an example. Well, I can't get into the shops. I can't get in and out of the supermarket without having to buy one of those damn end of aisle lollies or toys. And it's a meltdown. I just need to get in and get 3 items. If I could just get 3 items, right? Okay, so there's our goal, to be able to get in and out of the shops to buy 3 items without having to buy a toy while maintaining regulation, or, you know, whatever it is. This is really helpful because then you've got the environment, you've got the task, you can start to figure out what's the breakdown, and you can come up with these strategies. And maybe it's you know, kids have different perception of time and space. Maybe it's getting down and not saying no, but saying, hey, this is really cool. I love this. Let's take a photo of it and we'll show dad and we'll put it on your birthday board. You know, we'll create photos of your birthday, things that you might come up with birthday. And so using that predictability to know that no doesn't mean no, not ever, that it's sort of a contract that we could maybe get this in the future. It's not no, not ever. It's, you know, it could be that the sensory environment's overwhelming, so we're doing some things to prime them before they go in, so we get a lower set point. It's about knowing the child, but once we have a context with a task in an environment, it opens it could be having a checklist of the things we need to do. It could be a million different things when you know your kid and you know where they're doing what the task is and where they're doing it. And so consultation really is a great way to using this to empower families and caregivers to support their kids in daily life. That's my particular love for this tool. Okay, so we've sort of talked around it, but is there anything that comes to mind for you guys in terms of thinking about what this tool offers? We have this question around, we do say it's from graduates. Through the experience, people can get this value of it. And we sort of alluded to, for new grads, I love the structure. I called it a cheat code. It's a bit of a cheat code for making sure you can be comprehensive and ticking your boxes. The course is quite heavy and a lot of learning. So I think that's really valuable for more experienced therapists. But are there any things that come to mind for you guys in terms of different populations of PEDS OTs and how they can benefit from this tool in a different way?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that comes up for me, and then I'll just be brief, is that therapists are so hungry to be effective. And what happens is they take a training, and many of the trainings are sort of technique based, or like a tool, you learn a tool. And then what can happen is that you kind of get lost in the tool, you know, and you forget the context about applying it. So very often I use this phraseology of kind of zooming in and zooming out, that in our clinical minds, we have to really learn how to zoom into what's critical, but then zoom back out to the big picture. And I think when therapists learn strategies and techniques, they get lost in them and they forget the context and they forget the whole, even though we always know our value is that holistic, whole child, whole family, whole life approach. But we lose it. We start, you know, using, you know, whatever. And I don't want to name a technique because I don't want to say that any of them are bad. They're all great, but we can sort of become, you know, listeners, pressure givers, integrators of reflexes, users of swings, and that's kind of what we're doing. And to me, this tool really unsilos us. It doesn't let us live in this little camp that we might find ourselves in, and it allows us to make sure we're being holistic. And it begs you, and it invites you, and it woos you into holism. So I love that about it.
Is there anything that strikes you, Julie, in terms of different level of therapists?
I think there's just so many, because you can bring just about any range of knowledge or any tool into the STEPPSI and analyze it from a STEPPSI point of view. You know, that if you have a really, really full toolbox, you know, instead of just like pulling out a tool at a time, you can really step back and go, oh, here's my kid. Let's see what's in the box. What's the just right thing that's in the box, and really apply it with precision. So somebody who's got a really many years of practice and a hugely full toolbox is going to have many more nuanced ways of applying those tools. If you're a new grad and you only got a handful of tools, it's still going to help you do the best with that tools that you have in your box. But it's not going to be just use the tool like, you know, I have a hammer and so I pound. It's like, you know, you're figuring out where is the precise place to use your hammer, when do you put your hammer away. You know, do you hammer softly? Do you hammer hard? Do you hammer rhythmically? Do you hammer not? You know, so it's how do you use that tool in a really effective way? Because another dimension that is built into the STEPPSI core principle is this idea, specifically from thinking of regulation or just anything is that there's this idea of attaining and maintaining a good state or a level of success. But then there's also pushing the envelope to challenge. And I remember feeling really inspired the day that I truly got the Just Right challenge of Dr. Ayers is that I was working with a new grad colleague, and it was before I was in Denver with Tracy, and she had a particularly tough kid, and she came after a treatment session with him, and she sat down and she said, well, I've had 2 complete sessions with Thomas where he wasn't out of control once. And my first thought is, great. And then it was like, wait, if you're not pushing the edges, if you're not pushing the boundaries, I don't think this kid is growing. It's not enough to just get some kids somewhere into a great state and have them stay there. You have to challenge that. They can't just be in this nice little clinic with all these sweet little toys and all these little stuff. You've got to push the edges of the envelope. And it was the day that I'm like, that's what Jean Ayers meant by the Just Right challenge. It's the challenge. It's not the just right. It's the challenge that is important. So I think that is another place where, as a therapist, like I am sure Tracy could push an edge farther and more exquisitely than many other people that I know, is knowing where. And so those are things that you develop along the way. Once you have that idea of, I need to be pushing, I need to be challenging, I need to be pushing the edges. And, sometimes you push over and then now you have a chance for recovery, and recovery is learning. So I think it's,
Yeah, I think absolutely. The goal of OT is not to be good at OT. It's also not to be completely dysregulated for an hour when you go to OT. But we need, for some of our kids, finding regulation is the Just Right challenge.
Yeah.
But once we've got it, then it's how can we, Tracy uses this wonderful word, pendulate, to be able to nudge that top and bottom piece of that Just Right zone. I love that. I also want to mention that Sarah mentioned she's found it really good to give the words for things that she sort of felt like she had a sense of doing, and Zoe said that too. And Jamie's weighed in. There was a lot of comments in there now too. I think we're getting cooking, and we're getting on there. One thing I did want to point to or come back to that Julie mentioned was the tools in the toolbox. It's a good way to organize your tools in a toolbox, and you often come up with a bunch of ideas across all of these things. You don't have to do all of those things. What we do in our group supervisions is we often we'll go through all the mnemonic and see if there are things that we think are getting in the way or helpful or opportunities. And then we always go, what's the linchpin? What's your gut? What's the most important here? Where are you going to start? And we always agree on what the most important thing is. Doesn't mean you won't use the other things, and also doesn't mean if you don't have that tool in your toolbox, you can't help this child make great progress from a different angle. You can come in from different levels with different tools. But it always blows my mind when I have 5 or 6 therapists with me, we get through it and we say, what's the linchpin? Boom, predictability. This kid needs some more structure in their life. Boom, this kid has no idea what done looks like. They're cool aha moments. So we're getting on. I think, Trace, was there anything around that you wanted to add before I bring Kelsey in, and then we'll go to our last question?
Sure. So pendulate is Peter Levine's concept. I just would like to name that. And I think too, yeah, just that the fidelity that you all are able to achieve in those micro conversations within teams happens so fast. So this tool really does have strong validity to it. It really allows for our profession as a whole to strengthen, because how we talk to each other and how we reason starts to be shared, and it demystifies the decisions that we're making, so that when you're in one clinic to another clinic, a treatment plan doesn't feel so disparate. And those things in advancing practice are so powerful for me to witness. And, you know, just to notice the advances in practice that happen because of fidelity. So I'm glad you shared that story about your own clinic's journey with that, Dave. Yeah.
Now,
I would also,
yeah, there you go.
I would just add that there's nothing about the STEPPSI that is at all incongruent with the sensory integration fidelity tool or the fidelity thinking. It's still some of the things, some of the concepts are exactly the same, but different words, but it's completely congruent with that. So if that's a tool you're already using in terms of the fidelity in your clinic, that doesn't stop you. The STEPPSI is a reasoning tool that's utterly compatible with that philosophy and that thinking.
Absolutely. And really the AIRS-SI tool was derived, you know, and inspired from the STEPPSI, which is a beautiful thing. And yeah, so here's to it. Go STEPPSI.
STEPPSI. I'm going to ask Kelsey to come in, and then we'll do a little bit more talking. And if people can stay longer, maybe if there's some questions that jump out at people, we can answer those. But we want to make sure before we hit the 1 o'clock mark that Kelsey gets to tell us about this great offer that we're offering, or that DFX is offering.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey, and I'm an OT at DFX. I also have the pleasure of being our Learning Journeys program coordinator. So we're so incredibly excited to be launching the STEPPSI course, and I appreciate your participation in this webinar and that survey that we sent out a while back. This course, along with our Spirit course, really will serve as our foundational or cornerstone courses for the Learning Journeys program. The Learning Journeys program was created with this intention of providing elevated learning opportunities for clinicians all around the world, and also to create additional opportunities for everyone to learn and share and problem solve really in community. So an integral part of this STEPPSI course will be the associated learning communities or the cohorts. So everyone that signs up will be divided into a cohort group that you'll have access to a community page where you can share ideas while you're going through the course itself, ask additional questions. We'll share some resources or related content, and it's just a chance for you to further connect with other community members. So as a special thank you for your participation today and in that survey, everyone here will receive an email shortly, or you may have already, with a link to register for the STEPPSI course at a discounted rate. And this is also a priority registration. So you guys will have 48 hours before we open to the general public, or at least market to the general public. And so that's important because our cohorts are a first come, first serve basis, and everyone will receive a link from a Google form to rank order your preferred times, because our cohorts will be kind of associated with the live sessions with Tracy and Dave that are offered as part of this course. So check your emails. And if you did not receive an email, I'll put the Learning Journeys email in our chat box. Please email me if you have any questions or would like some additional information. So thank you again.
And to let everyone know, the live sessions, the 3 live sessions that we're offering for those first 80 people that sign up, they're not required. There's plenty to learn. Actually, I actually think that STEPPSI is like 10 courses. It is like a course on each letter of the mnemonic. It will like supercharge your understanding of arousal and sensory processing and adaptive responses. It's like 10 courses in one. But these extra sessions are just a really fun way to connect and to integrate that information. So sometimes we call them integration sessions. So there'll be 4 groups of 20, first come, first serve. So that is the bonus of getting in quickly, as well as the extra discount that Kelsey's offering you guys. So if you can get in the next 48 hours, you get first dibs on which of the groups you're in. And there's only going to be 80 people that get into those groups. So some people won't. And moving forward, you know, it's a pretty special thing to have these 3 sessions with Tracy and myself. All right, so we're close to the 1 o'clock mark, but I do think it's still worth us chatting a little bit longer for people who are happy to stay on and just wrap up this question that we had, if I can find it. Where did I put it? What were we talking about? We were talking about, oh yeah, how do we use it in practice? We've sort of been talking about it, but how do we use it in session planning or in daily life? Do you guys have any thoughts just at the top of your head? How do you encourage its use in those ways? I mean, that's what it's for, but.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you learn how to use the mnemonic, and then that kind of guides your decisions about what am I going to do here? But that's always in relation to the assessment and in relation to where the child's at in terms of their adaptability. So the forms of the STEPPSI help you to kind of keep all that in mind. It's a visually based tool. And for all of us, you know, our motor learning and our visual learning are a lot faster to fire. So if you're trying to put everything into words, it pulls you away from the child in the session. But just pausing and visualizing, where am I at? It helps you to be more fluid and available and to stay present in the session. So the thing that's so powerful, I think it's powerful because it's powerful in planning, it's powerful in reflection, and it's powerful in the moment. And that moment could be a treatment session. It also could be a consultation with, or a dialogue you're having with a teacher or a colleague, a physician, a parent in parent coaching. It's so versatile that way. And so I see it being used in all those different arenas and really effectively and powerfully.
Because it's a framework and not like a very rigid dogmatic model, it's really adaptable to just about any scale, you know. So it can be, you could probably, you know, design an entire like educational program or a camp around the STEPPSI, something you could, it could be really big scale, it could always be just in the moment scale. And I think one kind of micro application is in that moment when you're going like, all right, I don't know what to do now. I'm stuck here. I'm just stuck. Like this kid is flummoxing me. What I thought was happening is not happening. Here I am. You know, it is a moment to take the breath and go, okay, S, attain, challenge, T, you know, where are we? What are my supports? What's going to support this child in this moment? What can challenge this child in a moment? You know, and really going through the mnemonic and just having able to say STEPPSI is, you know, it's easy to remember, and then you literally step through it.
I'm wondering, can I share the sheet that we made for our clinic and here's an example that I think is like my favorite thing. You go to do a school visit because something's going wrong for Johnny, but you want to know, like, just not these sort of general things that you throw at the teacher. You want to know, what are you wanting here? What does done look like? How do we do it? I will, I'll fill out one of these sheets for every task a kid's doing, every activity. So they're doing a worksheet. I'll say to the teacher, what's he meant to be doing here? What's done look like? What's the activity that we're doing here? That's the goal behavior, right? Is that he's able to successfully complete that. And then we can, this is more for the course, but we can look at whether things are more adult-led or child-led. We can look at whether that skill is something that he's attaining or maintaining through challenge, and whether regulation is being attained in this activity or maintaining through challenge. But then I can just watch how he approaches it, and I can make comments about what I'm seeing in the environment, in the task. Does he seem to know what he's doing? Is he looking around and trying to get clues from his peers? Is he bored out of his brain because it's too easy? Is he bored or anxious because he has no idea what to do? And then I can just, again, keep jotting down what are the things that I'm seeing that are happening, and also what things that I think could possibly be happening. What's available? I see a wriggle cushion over on a shelf that's not being used. I see another kid with a letter strip that he could easily have because he forgets how to form his letters. Or I see things in the classroom. And so I just jot notes down on this. I might plot what his regulation looks like during the activity as well. I do one of these. I'll come out of the classroom with maybe 4 of these done, where I've just jotted down some ideas, got a sense. It's just structured my observation. It's really made me go, starting from not just how do I fix the kid in some random way, but what does done look like? What does successful participation in this occupation look like? Has the kid got that in this environment? Is their body set up to do that? And then we can look through the rest of those things. That's I think, an example of how we would use it in our clinic. In session, it's hard to do that during a session. So you're doing it after the session. You could maybe have it with you and jot some notes if things come up. But really, it's not a when you're engaging with the kid kind of thing. It's things we'll use in our parent engagement sessions when we're chatting to the parents. We're like, all right, hold on. Regulation for the purpose of what? Talk me through meal times. All right. And what does it look like? And what are your expectations here? And then we can ask those questions and do it that way. Does that fit how you guys see it as being used? Yeah. Cool.
But what sort of strikes me is that, that I don't really ever thought before is that there's no real right or wrong way to use the STEPPSI tool. And I think that there's some courses where there are things that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, but this is a tool and it's how it helps you.
Yeah, and actually that brings up another thought. Sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know which box it goes in. I don't know if it's task or predictability. And it's like, who cares? Capture it. Just capture it. And then if you've got a strategy, you got to, if the kid's successfully participating and life's easier for them, they don't care whether you put it in the task box or the predictability box. Just notice, capture it somewhere, draw an arrow if you really need to know that it's in both of those things. And it can be in both of those things. But it just provides such a lovely structure to get holistic and that comprehensive and getting it out of and getting it from the person to the environment and the occupation in a more dynamic way. That's my inline. Have you guys got any final thoughts that you would like people to take away about this training?
Yeah, I think that it's, just finding it, having a tool that is just right on the tip of your fingers, right on the tip of your mind. It just decreases the level of stress that we feel. And I really feel like the burnout factor that so many people are feeling in our very challenging world right now, that anything that we can do to help clinicians to feel supported is going to help them to show up differently for kids and families and educators and other folks. And so to me, it's one of those things, it's almost like a gift to yourself to find something that helps you to de-stress and to feel confident and competent, and to know that it's a well-proven thing that you've got, Julie, in your pocket, like nothing better than that.
I 100% agree. And I would say that if you're going through imposter syndrome, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. If you're feeling that self-doubt, if you feel not good enough, you get into this world and you're treating and you're like, oh, I don't know anything, right? This is a really powerful tool that once you know how to use it, I said my mission was to help people feel in control, capable, and authentically confident. Not a fake it till you make it, but it's like, you're doing good practice with this safety blanket of a structure that you can use. That's cool. And Julie, did you have a takeaway?
Just one more thought is that, I'm loving the extra P as playfulness, but there's a part of me that feels like the P is important for the child, but it actually may be important for you as a therapist. If it worked in a mnemonic, I would turn it to a J and call it joy, but it doesn't. It would be a really, really weird mnemonic. So keep it at playfulness. But I'm working with, new students all the time. And I'm like, what the most important thing that you can infuse into any treatment session is joy. And if you bring joy in for your clients, you're going to have joy for yourself. And I think joy is probably the best inoculation for burnout, is to always keep seeking the joy. And so I think I applaud the addition of the extra P, which I'm going to really know is a J in my mind.
I got shivers when you said that. And we're, as our core values, we have two that really relate to that. We are always playful, or we are playful, and we are connection driven. Our two core MoveAbout values, because it's so important. Also, that joy makes me think of one of my first mentors, Beth Austin, who is an amazing big brain. She talks about it's okay to have a goal of joyful jubilance. We use that in our clinic a lot too. All right, now we are over time. So whether, I think Kelsey answered the question that Marion had about how many hours. I think it was 14.5 hours total content. It will be released in 3 chunks. Is that right, Tracy? So you'll get a third of that, and then several weeks to be able to do that third. And then the people who are able to get into those integration sessions, they'll have that session, and then we'll release the second third, and then the final third as well. I guess in 1 minute, we've given them so much information. Why would someone bother to do it now that we've just given them all this information?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
So
trick question. The theory is so mind-blowing. It will blow your mind when you hear Tracy talk about arousal. It will change how you practice. You will just think, how did I survive with this quadrant model? I'm just going to tell you that the theory is actually mind-blowing, and it is actually 8, 9, 10 courses. Every section that we go through is just high-quality content. You will be more playful. You will be better at assessing regulation. You will be better at interacting. You will be better at using sensory diets and incorporating sensation and thinking about that task that we learn at uni that some of us forgot for a little bit till we get back into it. There's just so many ways to be better. But sorry, I cut you off, Tracy. What do you think they should do it?
No, I just think that it, to empower us and to make us a stronger community so we know how to talk to each other is so exciting. And there's a lot of familiar faces that I'm seeing. And Abby, I see you have your hand up, but just like what happens when we come together in community. So I'm as excited about the content as I am about how we've structured this with this community notion, and that we can dialogue with each other, and that we can share our successes and our struggles, and we're going to all be better for it. And and then just take that pandemic stress that's affecting child development. We're on it.
Awesome. Are you guys happy to stay on for 5 or 10 if anyone has any questions they want to jump on and ask?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions that they want to be brave enough to come off mic?
Abby has her hand up, I see.
Okay, come
No,
off.
you don't. You're just waving. Hello.
I was just waving and saying hi.
Okay.
Okay. Kelsey's answering Melanie. Melanie was asking about, can it be extended longer? There is a time frame that we have it in. There might be some circumstances, but I think Kelsey's answering that. It's really a person to person, but there really is a time frame that we limit to. And actually, I heard a statistic the other day that I think 5% of online courses get completed. I'm sure that's higher in our field, but actually what they find is clearer defined limits. We need constraint theory to help us do it. So we really are giving plenty of time to do it. I think it's about a week per hour. Or you can do those chunks all in one sitting if you want, but really it's good to just lock in and do it. How many weeks do you get to complete each section? Did you have the answer to that, Kelsey? I think it's about an hour a week. So I think you probably get about 4 or 5 weeks to do about 5 hours, I think, is roughly what it is. Does that sound right, Kels?
Yes, and on our Thinkific page, which I can put in here, the PDF of the course schedule is available, so you guys can check that out, and it will lay it all out there for you. So I'll pop that in this. I think we had a lot of questions around that, so hopefully that answers them for you.
So you should have. I've already received my email, so I can get a discount, and I can get into those groups ASAP if I enroll in the next 48 hours. That should be in your inbox, but you can also go to the DFX Learning Journeys page. Did you put that? Do you want to put that website straight in again, Kels, so people have it? We're going to hang around here just for a few more minutes. If you did have some interest in those other MoveAbout programs, the New Grad Calm, the MoveAbout Mentoring, or the Immersion, shoot a message to Zoe and let her know how to let you know. But I really would encourage people. Literally the reason I'm teaching this is because I could not be more passionate about it. I'm literally more passionate than Tracy is about it. Because it really is gold, and it just gives you such a sense of control, because we know in our heart of hearts that not every kid that's moving really fast is just a seeker, and we need to give them more. It just doesn't work with every kid, and the kids won't fit in those boxes. And there is a reason, and maybe that reason is because it's about action regulation, not just about arousal. It's about these things. There's a lot of good quality stuff in this, but you can use this tool to organize you. But the course is a great course. All right, so doesn't look like there's any other questions. So we're going to wrap it up there. We'll hang around for another minute or two before we boot everyone off. And thanks for attending.
Everyone for showing up, and for showing up for each other, and just for our field. Thanks. And Julie Wilbarger, I love you. Thank you for being here.
I love you too.
Is the STEPPSI needed for the spirit was another. So everyone, we're just going to be answering things if they come in here. So if you want to leave, you're welcome to. Someone asked, is the STEPPSI required to do this before the spirit course?
So the STEPPSI is helpful to take before the spirit course. The spirit is a deeper clinical reasoning model that expands from the sensory modulation foundation into the sensory, affective, and motor functions that are interrelated to each other. So there's a lot more heavy duty neuroscience content in the spirit course, but the spirit uses the STEPPSI as the treatment planning tool. So the spirit is kind of an extension of the STEPPSI. The spirit course has been out for a few years on our Thinkific platform, and we are doing the course now in more of a cohort-based model. A few of the folks that have done the cohort are here, and the spirit is hard in a way to learn. So it takes the cohort because you need to be able to be with people to talk it over and process. The STEPPSI is not nearly as hard to learn, and it is the foundation of the treatment planning for the spirit. So I think the sequence that works best probably is to take STEPPSI first and to take the spirit second, and those will now be offered routinely on a calendarized schedule on our Learning Journeys platform. So we finally have accomplished this goal that we've had for quite a long time. And the ripple effect from taking these courses is kind of humbling to me and really, really, really powerful. So I can't wait to see how improved things go for each of you as you embark on this journey with us.
I agree. If you've done Jen's traffic jam course or a Winnie Dunn course or any of these other intro to RED courses, I think the STEPPSI is a really amazing, but quite a large, big step. It is something that new people can come to and get a lot out of. It is something that people have been treating for 20, 30 years will have so many jaw-dropping moments. And it is a really great entree then on to this spirit model, which is very, very detailed and comprehensive. A couple of quick questions here. Someone's asking, will the recording be made available? We don't normally make the unplugged sessions available because really it's about community and we want people coming in. But we will talk about it. And if it does become available, I'll make sure that I email you guys to let you know. Someone was saying, I couldn't write fast enough. All right, I think we're going to finish up there. You can email us at pd@moveabout.com.au if you have any questions. And you can email you guys, is it learningjourneys@dfx.com?
Yeah, learningjourneys@developmentaleffects.org.
So you can email either of us. And yeah, we hope to see you guys in some of the integration session cohorts. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, MoveAbout.
Thanks, Dave. Jake.